On a calm, sunny afternoon, the small-town library was a quiet place filled with soft whispers and the gentle rustle of turning pages. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting warm light over rows of bookshelves. A few people were scattered around the room, some typing quietly on laptops, others flipping through novels, and a group of children giggling softly in the colorful children's section. Near one of the windows sat a black teenage boy. He was sitting straight, focused on his notebook, carefully writing notes and occasionally glancing at the open book beside him. His calm face showed concentration and respect for the peaceful place around him. He wasn't loud or distracting, he just wanted to learn. Suddenly the heavy library door creaked open, breaking the quiet for a moment. A woman walked in. She scanned the room with sharp eyes, her gaze quickly landing on the boy. She frowned slightly, folding her arms as she stared at him. Something about him seemed to bother her, though the boy hadn't done anything wrong. She moved slowly between the shelves, her eyes never leaving him. The tension in the air grew, even if no one else noticed. The library remained calm on the surface, but under that calm, something uncomfortable was building, a quiet storm waiting to break. The woman stood near the shelves, her eyes locked on the black teen. At first she told herself, she was just being careful. After all, wasn't it strange for someone to sit in the library for so long, looking around instead of reading? But the more she watched, the more her thoughts twisted. What if he was hiding something? What if he was planning to cause trouble? Her mind raced, painting a picture that didn't match reality. Her suspicion grew heavier, turning into something sharper, almost like fear. She noticed how he occasionally looked up, scanning the room, and took that as proof he wasn't just there to study. She convinced herself she needed to do something. Slowly she walked over to the librarian, sitting behind the desk. The librarian was an older woman, kind but tired-looking. The suspicious woman leaned in and whispered, "That boy, I don't think he belongs here. I think he's up to something." Her voice was low but firm. The librarian's eyes flickered toward the teen, then back at the woman. She looked uncomfortable. "He's just here to study," she said softly, trying not to make a scene. "Maybe you're mistaken." But the woman wasn't convinced. Shaking her head, the woman pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said loudly enough for some nearby patrons to hear. "He's been loitering here all afternoon. Suspicious behavior. I'm worried for everyone's safety." The room's calm began to crack. Some people looked up from their books, eyebrows raised. Whispered conversations started to ripple through the crowd. Eyes turned toward the teen, who now looked confused and a little hurt. He closed his notebook and stood up slowly. His voice was steady but soft as he asked, "Is there a problem? Can I help you?" There was no anger in his tone, only calm and respect. The woman ignored him, her focus locked on her phone, dialing the police with a sense of urgency. The tension grew thicker, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. The teen stayed still, hands at his sides, waiting patiently. Meanwhile the woman's gaze burned with suspicion, convinced she was protecting the library, and yet no one else seemed sure what was really going on. The police arrived quickly, their footsteps echoing softly in the quiet library. 2 officers entered, scanning the room before their eyes settled on the teen and the woman who had called them. Slowly, a small crowd began to gather. People stopped what they were doing, whispering nervously, stealing glances at the growing scene. The woman, feeling more confident now, pointed sharply at the teen. "That boy," she said loudly. "He's been acting suspicious, just sitting there, watching people. I don't think he belongs here." Her voice carried through the room, drawing even more attention. One of the officers stepped forward and addressed the teen. "Can you explain what you're doing here?" His tone was polite, but firm. The teen nodded calmly. "I'm just studying," he replied, voice steady. "I come here often to work on school. I wasn't doing anything wrong." The officer glanced around, unsure how to handle the situation. The woman's accusations felt serious, but there was no clear evidence. The tension in the room was thick, almost heavy enough to touch. Whispers started to rise among the onlookers. Some whispered quietly about racial profiling, how the teen was being judged unfairly because of the color of his skin. Others felt angry or upset, but kept their voices low, not wanting to make things worse. You could feel the unease spreading like a quiet storm. Suddenly the teen reached inside his jacket. The room fell completely silent. Everyone's eyes widened, breaths held tight. What was he doing? Was he reaching for something dangerous? The suspense was unbearable. The officers stepped back slightly, hands ready but cautious. The woman's face tightened with nervousness and suspicion. The crowd leaned in, waiting for whatever was about to happen next. Then the teen slowly pulled out something from inside his jacket, a shiny badge. It gleamed under the library lights. The room gasped as the teen calmly held it up for the officers and everyone else to see. The badge was real. He was not just a student or a visitor, he was a police officer. The entire room seemed to freeze for a moment, caught between shock and disbelief. The teen held the badge steady in his hand, showing it clearly to the officers and the crowd gathering around. The metal caught the light, shining bright against the quiet tension in the room. Everyone's eyes locked on the badge, and a sudden hush fell over the library. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. The teenager was no ordinary visitor. He was an off-duty police officer, wearing plain clothes, quietly studying on his day off. His calm, steady presence suddenly made sense to everyone. The woman who had called the police shifted uncomfortably. Her face flushed red with embarrassment. She opened her mouth to speak but quickly shut it, unsure what to say next. She tried to backtrack, saying things like, "I didn't know, I was just worried," but her words fell flat. The damage was done, and the room was already buzzing with a mix of shock and disappointment at her behavior. One of the officers nodded toward the teen. "He's on a break right now," the officer explained to the crowd, "just here to study, nothing suspicious about that." The tension in the room started to dissolve. The crowd's attitude shifted. People who had been watching with suspicion now looked surprised and in many cases, respectful. Some quietly whispered apologies to the teen, while others murmured to each other about how wrong the woman had been to jump to conclusions. The teen, still calm and composed, lowered his badge and said nothing at first. The silence spoke louder than words. His quiet dignity in the face of such unfair treatment touched many hearts. Even the librarian gave a small, understanding nod toward the teen. The whole room seemed to realize how quickly people can judge others based on fear and misunderstanding, instead of facts and respect. The woman looked away, her earlier confidence gone. She left the library soon after, her steps quiet. The story was over, but the lesson lingered in the air, a powerful reminder about the harm caused by prejudice and the strength found in patience and truth. After the officers confirmed everything, the teen finally spoke. His voice was steady, but there was a sadness in it that touched the whole room. "It's hard," he said quietly, "to be judged just because of the color of my skin. I'm a police officer, just like those who came in today. I protect this community every day, but sometimes, people don't see that. They see a black boy, and assume the worst." He looked around at the faces watching him, some surprised, some ashamed. "I'm proud of my job. I want to keep everyone safe. But moments like this, when people don't trust me, or think I'm dangerous, those moments hurt more than I can say." The woman who had called the police stood off to the side. She didn't say a word or apologize, but her eyes told a different story, quiet regret and shame that she couldn't hide. Without a glance back, she turned and left the library, her steps slow and heavy. The crowd began to slowly disperse, but many still whispered among themselves. Some talked about how unfair it was to assume things based on skin color. Others wondered how often this kind of thing happened, but went unnoticed. The library returned to its usual quiet, but something had changed in the air. Looking back on the moment, it was clear how quickly fear and hate can rise, even in the most peaceful places. But it was just as clear how quickly those feelings could turn to shame and understanding once the truth came out. It was a reminder that people are more than appearances, and that rushing to judgment only causes harm. This story shows a hope that one day, more people will look beyond skin color, and see the person inside. That respect and kindness will win over fear and suspicion. Because when we take a moment to listen and understand, we all become safer, stronger, and kinder. Maybe that's the real lesson from that quiet afternoon in the library. This story reminds us that prejudice hurts everyone, both those who are judged unfairly, and the people who let fear guide their actions. When we jump to conclusions based on skin color or appearance, we miss the truth and cause pain. But truth and dignity have a powerful way of shining through hate and misunderstanding. It's important for all of us to think about our own biases. Sometimes, they show up without us even realizing it. But by choosing kindness, respect, and patience, we can change how we see others, and how others see us. Small acts of understanding can break down walls built by fear. At the end of the day, everyone deserves to be treated with respect and fairness. When we look beyond appearances, we open the door to empathy and connection. And in that space, hope grows. Let this story inspire us to be kinder, to listen more, and to stand up against unfairness whenever we see it. Because a little kindness can make a big difference in someone's life and in the world.